Have you ever wondered who is really making your decisions? The you know, or the one that hides beneath thought? Jung once said that until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. That realization is a shock. We like to believe we are in control, but our motives, desires, and fears often rise from a place we cannot see. It's as if something ancient within you has been quietly steering every choice, every attraction, every mistake, waiting for the moment you'd finally notice its presence. The unconscious does not speak in words. It speaks in symbols, in slips of the tongue, in dreams that wake you sweating in the night. It is the whisper behind your fears, the invisible hand that writes your story from the shadows. And when you first glimpse it, truly glimpse it, the ground beneath your identity begins to tremble, because you realize that the one you call I is not the author, but the character. The self you've built is a mask, and behind it lives something infinitely larger, infinitely stranger. This discovery can feel like falling into an abyss made of your own reflection. Every emotion, every habit, every attraction that once felt natural now reveals a secret intention. You see how the unconscious hides your pain beneath ambition, your longing beneath control, your insecurity beneath kindness, and it becomes impossible to unsee. Yet this shock is sacred. It's the moment you stop living as an echo and start listening to the source. To meet your unconscious is to meet the truth about yourself, not the polished version, but the raw, trembling one that's been waiting to be acknowledged. Before we descend deeper into this hidden world, take a moment. Check if you're subscribed to this channel. Like this video if you've ever felt something inside guiding you beyond reason, and tell me in the comments, have you ever sensed a part of yourself watching from the dark? The unconscious is not a dark abyss that swallows us. It is a mirror, silent, merciless, and precise. It reflects everything the conscious mind refuses to see. Jung believed that what we call shadow is simply the truth about ourselves before we edit it. Every judgment, every envy, every attraction reveals a piece of what we've denied. The people who irritate you, the patterns you repeat, the emotions you suppress, all of them are messages sent from the depths, asking to be recognized. But mirrors are uncomfortable. When the unconscious rises, it doesn't show you a monster. It shows you yourself, stripped of performance. That's why we turn away. We hide behind roles, identities, and ideas of who we think we should be. We polish the image instead of meeting the reflection. Yet the more you avoid your own truth, the more distorted your reality becomes. Life begins to echo your denial. The same failures, the same lovers, the same wounds, until the lesson is finally seen. The unconscious speaks a language the intellect can't decipher. It speaks through dreams, symbols, coincidences, and sensations that logic dismisses. When you start paying attention, the pattern emerges. The dream that warns you before the fall. The repeated situation that forces you to confront what you've buried. It's as if your soul is using life itself as a canvas to paint its truth. And here lies the paradox. The mirror is not your enemy. It doesn't punish, it reveals. To face it is to reclaim the parts of yourself left behind in denial. When you can look without flinching, without judging, you start to see the beauty within the darkness. The reflection becomes clearer, and with it, your consciousness expands. The unconscious is always watching, always whispering through the cracks of awareness. The question is, will you keep looking away or dare to meet the eyes staring back from within? We are born authentic, but learn to perform. From childhood, the soul is taught that survival depends on adaptation, on pleasing, hiding, pretending. Jung called these disguises personas, masks we wear to belong, to be loved, to avoid rejection. They are not lies exactly, but fragments of truth arranged for the comfort of others. We become fluent in pretending, and after years of practice, the performance feels natural. The tragedy is that we forget we are acting. The persona keeps us safe, but at a cost. Each time we silence an emotion to seem composed, a piece of the self retreats into the unconscious. Every time we play the role expected of us, The good child, the strong adult, the enlightened seeker. The distance between who we are and who we show grows wider. Eventually, the mask becomes so heavy that our face forgets how to breathe. The unconscious begins to rebel, through anxiety, exhaustion, disconnection. It's not punishment, it's protest. We cling to our masks because the truth underneath feels unbearable. What if they stop loving us when they see who we are? What if we stop loving ourselves? But the irony is that the persona doesn't prevent pain, it prolongs it. The energy spent maintaining illusion could have become self-understanding. And the moment you dare to remove even one layer, you feel both terror and relief. Terror at your own nakedness, relief at your own existence. Jung warned that the persona must not be destroyed, but made transparent. A tool, not an identity. You still play roles in the world, but you know they are roles. You wear the mask consciously instead of being worn by it. The truth beneath the persona is not shameful, it's sacred. Beneath the layers of adaptation there waits a self untouched by pretense, quietly asking, "When will you remember me?" Long before the mind admits the truth, the body begins to whisper it. Jung believed the body is the stage where the unconscious performs its unspoken dramas. Every tension, illness, or sudden fatigue carries a message the psyche has been trying to deliver. When we refuse to feel, the body feels for us. It becomes the mouthpiece of the soul, translating what language cannot hold. You can ignore thoughts but not symptoms. The jaw clenches with unspoken anger. The stomach knots around swallowed guilt. The heart races at the memory you claim to have forgotten. The body remembers everything, every secret, every avoidance, every suppressed desire, and when it can no longer hold the weight of repression, it speaks in the only way it knows, through pain, restlessness, or collapse. What medicine calls psychosomatic is often the unconscious pleading to be heard. We live in a culture that treats the body as a machine and emotions as weakness. We medicate, distract, and numb, trying to silence what is simply asking to be felt. But the body doesn't seek perfection. It seeks participation. It wants you to listen, to notice the pulse beneath the noise, to ask what the ache is trying to tell you. Healing begins not with control, but with conversation. Sometimes the symptom disappears the moment its message is understood, not because it was fixed, but because it was finally acknowledged. The unconscious stops screaming when it's seen. The body softens when truth is allowed to move through it. So the next time your chest tightens or your breath shortens for no reason, pause. Ask yourself, what emotion have I buried? What truth have I denied? Your body isn't betraying you. It's guiding you back to yourself. Tell me in the comments, have you ever felt your body reveal something your mind refused to see? There comes a moment in self-discovery when the truth no longer comforts, it dismantles. Jung warned that the ego, our fragile surface identity, survives by illusion. It builds a story of who we are, selecting only what fits the image. The rest, the contradictions, the impulses, the shadow, are exiled into the unconscious. The ego calls this control, but the unconscious calls it denial. And denial, when prolonged, becomes destiny. To awaken is to watch that illusion fracture. You realize the self you defended so fiercely was never whole, only curated. The ego's voice trembles when it meets something greater than its own narrative. It resists, rationalizes, attacks, or flees. It calls insight madness because it threatens extinction. And yet this death of certainty is the beginning of true vision. Consciousness expands only when the ego surrenders its throne. The truth the ego cannot bear is simple. You are not in control. You never were. Every choice, every attraction, every fear arises from depths far beyond your will. The conscious mind is the smallest island in a vast psychic ocean. When this realization hits, it feels like humiliation, the collapse of everything you thought was you. But beneath the humiliation is freedom. The moment you stop pretending to be the master, you become the witness. Jung called this process individuation, the reconciliation between ego and self. The ego must bow to something larger, to the mysterious intelligence that organizes both chaos and order. This surrender doesn't destroy the ego, it purifies it. The mask becomes transparent, the self becomes instrument rather than actor. The ego will fight this truth, but every awakening soul must live it. It is the shock that breaks the mirror and shows what was always behind it, not a void, but awareness itself, watching silently through your eyes. Nothing buried stays buried. The unconscious has perfect memory, and what you refuse to face will always find its way back to you, not to punish but to complete. Jung understood repression as psychic gravity. The more energy you use to push something down, the stronger it pulls your life into its orbit. We think we're escaping the past, but we're only rearranging it. Every unhealed wound returns disguised as coincidence, as repetition, as the person who triggers what we've avoided. You can call it bad luck, karma, or fate, but it is simply your unconscious trying to finish the story. When something keeps happening again and again, the same argument, the same heartbreak, the same mistake, it isn't the world against you. It's the world mirroring what you've hidden. The psyche seeks wholeness through repetition, replaying the lesson until it's learned. Jung saw this process as the psyche's creative intelligence. Even chaos has purpose. The unconscious doesn't communicate through logic, but through patterns and symbols, what he called synchronicities, meaningful coincidences that bridge the inner and outer worlds. When you begin to notice them, life starts to speak a strange, sacred language. The right book appears at the right time. A stranger says exactly what you needed to hear. A dream bleeds into waking life. The repressed returns not to haunt but to guide. The pain that resurfaces is not regression, it's remembrance. The unconscious reintroduces your forgotten parts, not to overwhelm you, but to offer reintegration. Every fear that comes back is an invitation. Every emotion you thought was gone is asking for reconciliation. So when your past knocks again, don't hide. Open the door with curiosity. The shadow that returns is not a curse. It's your own soul asking to come home. Every awakening begins with betrayal, not of others, but of the image you had of yourself. Jung taught that the shadow, the sum of all you deny and repress, is not an enemy, but a compass. It points toward the places within you where consciousness still fears to go. The ego calls it darkness, the soul calls it truth. You cannot awaken without descending first into what you've rejected. Light, when honest, must pass through shadow. The shadow contains everything you've disowned, your jealousy, rage, ambition, lust, sorrow, all the instincts that culture taught you to hide. But these aren't signs of corruption, they are raw energy. When repressed, they poison the psyche. When faced, they become power. The shadow is your untamed vitality, waiting to serve the whole instead of haunting it. Jung warned that integration is dangerous work, not because the shadow will destroy you, but because it will show you what you truly are. To meet the shadow is to lose innocence. You begin to see how easily love becomes control, how purity hides pride, how kindness conceals fear. The lines between good and evil blur, and morality deepens into self-awareness. You stop asking, "Am I good?" and begin asking, "Am I true?" Integration doesn't mean indulging darkness, but listening to what it wants to reveal. Each emotion carries a message. Anger protects boundaries. Envy shows desire. Fear asks for trust. When you welcome these voices with humility, they cease to scream. If you've ever felt that your darkness was guiding you more than your light, you're not lost, you're awakening. The shadow walks ahead of the light, clearing the way for wholeness. Tell me in the comments, what part of yourself do you feel is still waiting in the dark to be seen? Beneath the personal layers of memory and trauma lies a deeper ocean, the collective unconscious. Jung described it as the shared soul of humanity, a field of ancient symbols and instincts that lives through each of us. You are not just an individual. You are a living expression of the human story, shaped by forces older than civilization. Every fear, every desire, every dream you have ever known carries echoes of all who came before. The collective unconscious is the library of existence. Its books are myths, its language is archetype. When you dream of falling, you relive humanity's fear of losing control. When you imagine light breaking through darkness, you're speaking the timeless language of rebirth. This is why stories across cultures mirror each other, the hero's journey, the descent into shadow, the return with wisdom. They are not coincidences, they are memories of the soul. And yet, the modern mind forgets this sacred inheritance. We believe ourselves to be isolated minds, floating in chaos, when in truth we are chords within one vast symphony. The images that rise in your dreams are not random. They are messages from this collective field, reminding you of your place within something immeasurable. When you begin to recognize these patterns, life starts to unfold differently. Synchronicities multiply. The ordinary becomes symbolic. A conversation feels like a message. A storm feels like a reflection of your own turmoil. The border between inner and outer dissolves. You understand that consciousness is not trapped inside your skull. It breathes through the entire universe. To awaken to the collective unconscious is to remember that your story is not yours alone. You are both the dreamer and the dream, both the seeker and the myth. Humanity is dreaming itself through you. At the threshold of every transformation stands fear, not the ordinary kind, but the ancient terror of meeting oneself without disguise. Jung called this descent into the unconscious the night sea journey, a symbolic death through which the soul is reborn. It is not an escape from the world, but a surrender to what the world has hidden inside you. The abyss is not external. It is the depth you have avoided all your life. To descend is to stop running. It means letting the illusions fall one by one until there is nothing left to hold on to. Not identity, not certainty, not hope. The descent strips you bare. It demands humility, patience, and the willingness to face truths that might undo everything you thought was real. But in that undoing, something sacred stirs, awareness that does not depend on control. This journey has no map, because no two abysses are the same. For some, it appears as depression, for others as loss, silence, or isolation. The descent feels like death because the ego cannot survive it intact. Yet what dies is not the self, but the story of who you thought you were. The true self, the one Jung called the self with a capital S, waits beneath the rubble, watching, timeless, unafraid. When you finally touch the bottom, you realize the abyss was never punishment. It was purification. Every tear, every collapse, every dark night was the soul washing away illusion. And when you rise again, it's not triumph but clarity that fills you. You move through life lighter, quieter, more whole. To descend is to trust that what falls apart was never meant to last. The courage to enter your own darkness is the only path to genuine light. When the descent ends, there is no explosion of light, only stillness. You awaken not as someone new, but as what has always been beneath the noise. Jung wrote that enlightenment is not the imagining of light, but the recognition of darkness made conscious. Lucidity is born from the invisible, from the moment you stop resisting what you are. The unconscious no longer feels like an enemy, but like a vast intelligence that breathes through you. Every sensation, every dream, every silence becomes part of the dialogue with something eternal. You start living differently. You listen more than you speak. You no longer chase meaning, you let it reveal itself. The conflicts that once consumed you now appear as lessons, perfectly placed by the unseen architect within. You notice that the same energy that once caused suffering now fuels creation, empathy, and calm. Awareness becomes your sanctuary. This lucidity does not promise perfection. It does not protect you from pain, but it makes pain sacred, a language through which the invisible continues to shape your soul. You move through the world quietly, yet everything you touch feels changed because you are no longer reacting from fear, but responding from consciousness. The world outside still trembles, but the center within you does not. Awakening, you realize, was never about escaping the unconscious. It was about remembering that you are the unconscious, learning to dance with its rhythm instead of fighting its tide. The invisible guides every heartbeat, every encounter, every act of love. To see this is to finally come home. If you've reached this point, you've journeyed through the hidden architecture of your own mind. Check that you're subscribed. This channel exists for those walking this same invisible path. Like this video to help awaken others, and leave a comment sharing what this exploration revealed within you. And when you're ready, watch the next video, because consciousness never ends. It only deepens.